peace, hotep, unity, and power to all African people around the world. Let us first give all praise and all honor to the God of our ancestors, the God of Africa, the Almighty Amen-Ra. This is your brother Radio 1 coming back at you again with another video of truth and historical reality. Now the title of this video is "The Jews or Israelites were everywhere except West Africa." So we have the black Hebrew Israelites going around telling our people that we are the descendants of the Jews, or from the tribe of Judah, and telling everybody else that they are fake Jews. They are not real Jews, and telling the people that actually call themselves Jews today that they are not real Jews, but they are fake Jews. But truth is, these black Hebrew Israelites are actually the fake Jews, because I'm going to get off into the library, into the historical facts and the historical reality. And I got my library right here. Okay. And I'm going to read some things from it. I'm in the library right now, and I'm going to prove my point and prove that black people in America are not from the tribe of Judah. We are not Jews whatsoever. Okay. Let's make that very clear. You even had some Jews that were converts. You had real Jews, but we were neither. We were neither converts nor real Jews, because Jews did not dwell amongst our ancestors in West Africa. Let's make that clear. Now, the Hebrew Israelites, I don't know what it is about them, but they do not value real history. Okay, they do not read real history. They make up stuff and expect you to believe it. And I used to have respect for the Hebrew Israelites, okay, at a time when I almost fell for this lie. But now I have little respect for them. I have little respect for them because I found out that this is a lie. And I have little respect for them because they cannot even admit to the lie. They cannot even admit that this is a lie, accept it, and move on. But what do? They want to keep lying and keep trying to defend their lie and never admitting to the truth. That's the worst way to be. Man. You got to be a messed up in the head person to be that way. If it's a lie, it's a lie. It's a lie. Move on. So, yeah, we're going to get off into some records showing, okay, we're going to start with the Bible. Then we're going to deal with other historical records. And we're going to show the true migrational pattern of the Jews. Now, I know you see a lot of videos of these Hebrew Israelites talking about the migration of Jews into West Africa. Well, I'm here to tell you that all that is pseudo, it's false. Okay, there is no description of no historical account of a migration pattern from Israel to West Africa. They made it up. It's a lie. So we're going to get off into the records. And I see a lot of these Hebrew Israelites are running. But don't run. Admit to the truth. Admit that you are wrong. Do not run. And stop trying to defend your lies, coming up with excuses after excuses, trying to defend your lie. But just admit to the truth. Simple as that. If you're wrong, you're wrong. See, some of these Hebrew Israelites are so full of pride that they cannot even admit that they are wrong. Now, you want to be a part of an organization like that, a corrupted pseudo organization that do not follow real history, and they will tell you, well, that history was written by the white man. That's a lie. Well, if you're going to abandon that, you might as well abandon it all. But yeah, okay. So without further ado, we're going to get off into this. We're going to get off into the records, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. Okay. So we're going to deal with the Bible first, on the migration of the Jews and which lands did they go to. Okay. And we're going to take it from there. So now, according to the Bible, the first migration of the Jews began in the 7th century BCE, when Israel was invaded by Assyria, or by the Assyrians, by the king of Assyria. Okay, and Isaiah 11:11, okay, speaks of this. But first we're going to get off into what Isaiah says in his account about Egypt, Jews going into Egypt. Okay, so let's start with Isaiah chapter 31, verse 1. He goes on to say, woe to them that go down to Egypt for help, and stay on horses and trust in chariots, because they are many, and in horsemen, because they are very strong. But they look not unto the Holy One of Israel, neither seek the Lord. Okay, so that is, okay. Isaiah is refers to the invasion of Assyria, because that was during the time that Isaiah lived, during the invasion of Assyria. And he's telling them, woe to them that go down to Egypt for help, and stay on horses and trust in chariots. So that's chapter 31. So that's showing that the Israelites were migrated into Egypt during that time, when Assyrians were invaded. So he goes on to say again in chapter 30, Isaiah chapter 30, verse 1, woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, and that over with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they add sin to sin. In chapter 2, verse 2, he says, that walk to go down into Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. So Isaiah is pretty much saying that during the Assyrian invasion, the Israelites went down into Egypt, fled into Egypt. This was the 7th century BCE. Okay, this was the first time when the Israelites had to leave Israel and flee into another land from invasion. And we see here that it was in Egypt. But then he goes on to say in chapter 11 and 11, okay? So let's stay in order here, people. Stay in order and get down to the bottom of it, okay? He says, Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, chapter 11 and 11. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. So it's pretty much saying that the Israelites were in Assyria, which is modern day Iraq, in Egypt, which is Egypt today, from Pathros, which is southern Egypt, from Cush, which is Sudan, south of Egypt, in Abyssinia, which is modern day Ethiopia. That was the land of Cush. Okay, and from Elam, which was Persia, which was to the far east of Israel, and from Shinar, which was Samaria, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea, which was Greece, or the Greek Isles of the sea. This is where the Israelites fled to during the Assyrian invasion. West Africa is not mentioned. Okay? So we can see here that no migration into West Africa during this time. Only in Iraq, Assyria, Egypt, Persia, Greece, and those areas. No Jews, no Israelites in West Africa. But let's move on. So we dealt with Isaiah. Now we're going to deal with Jeremiah during the time of the Babylonian invasion, or what they call the Babylonian captivity that took place in the 6th century BCE, or the late part of the 7th century BCE. Around 600 BC, 605, 609 BCE, in that area right there. But let's deal with that. Now, so we're going to deal with Jeremiah. We're going to make it real quick. Yeah, I don't want to hold y'all too long, but we're going to get to the bottom of this, and we're going to prove that these people called Jews have nothing to do with us, blacks in America. Okay? So Jeremiah chapter 44, verse 1. And the word came to Jeremiah concerning all the Jews which dwell in the land of Egypt, which dwell at Megiddo, at Taphanes, and at Noph, in the country of Pathros. Okay? So Jeremiah 44 is clearly saying that the word came to Jeremiah concerning all the Jews which dwell in the land of Egypt. Okay? So, and it says in Megiddo, Taphanes, and Noph. Noph is Memphis, and Pathros is southern Egypt. Okay? So, we see here that Jeremiah is speaking of more Jews, or people from the tribe of Judah, fleeing into Egypt during the Babylonian invasion. Jeremiah lived during the Babylonian invasion. So, again, Jews fleeing into Egypt, not West Africa. In the 6th century, 600 BCE. And let's go down to okay. Then he goes on to say, so that none, okay, Jeremiah chapter 44, verse 14, verse 13, for I will punish them that dwell in the land of Egypt, as I have punished Jerusalem by the sword, and by the famine, and by the pestilence, so that none of the remnant of Judah which are going into the land of Egypt to sojourn there shall escape or remain, that they should return into the land of Judah, to which they have desired to return to dwell there. For none shall return, but shall escape. So it's saying again that Jews fled into Egypt during the Babylonian invasion. So we are dealing with the earliest part of the migration of Jews. And and later on, they spread it out more and more into other places. But this is the origin of it. This is the ancient part of the migration of Jews. This is where it began. Okay? First king of the Jews, they say, was what? David. They set up the kingdom of Israel. And then when during the time of Isaiah, the Assyrians invaded, the Babylonians invaded, and they fled into Egypt, Cush, Persia to the east, Egypt, Cush to the south, the Greek islands to the west, and Hamath to the north. So we see here that Jews were in Iraq, Iran, Greece, Babylon, Egypt, and Sudan, and Ethiopia, Abyssinia. Real Jews. So how can you claim to be a real Jew when you can't even prove that they were in the geographical location that your ancestors were taken from during the Atlantic slave trade? Let's be realistic, people. Can we be realistic here? Can we make some sense? Stop believing people because they just say something and it sounds good. Do your own research. Know the truth. And be logical about it. So, and that's dealing with Jeremiah, okay? And we don't have to go no further than that. It says what it says, okay? You always have the Hebrew Israelites saying, well, you got to understand the Bible. And they go in the Bible and they twist the verse around and make it say something else other than what it's saying. Why can't the verse just speak for itself? Why do we need your false and pseudo interpretation of what a verse is saying? Does it say in the Bible, tell it as it is written, not as what you want it to be? Let's move on. Man, I swear that we are living in the age of falsehood. This is the era of falsehood and pseudo-history. Sometimes I feel like that I am the last true historian or honest historian left on the earth. Because I can't even have a decent conversation with other so-called historians about a subject. Because they are so corrupt and full of shit that I can't even hold a conversation with them. I have to cut it short and go my way. Because their teachings is so pseudo, so false and corrupt, it's crazy. And a lot of these historians that's coming on YouTube, they are teaching a corrupt, pseudo, Eurocentric version of history. They're not sticking to the records. What happened to sticking to the records and telling history accurately? You got so many pseudo clowns walking around making up pseudo history. And when I ask them to bring forth their source, they can't show it. And they go to making up all kind of fantasies and fairy tales. And the reason why they can't show it, because they do not have it to show. Oh, people. Man, are y'all hearing me? Can I get a witness? Can I get an amen? Can I get somebody to ride with me? Is there an honest person left on this planet Earth? This is crazy. You have the white supremacists, the racist white supremacists with their fake DNA studies. And you got these Negroes walking around telling this fake history, walking around with their long garbs on, walking around with their dresses and their Halloween costumes on, and telling their fake history. Now, some people even question if the Bible's even true. But that's a whole nother debate. That's a whole nother subject. But even if the Bible is true or not, let's still tell the truth about it. Okay? Some of y'all think, well, the Bible is a lie. But y'all, yeah, the Holy Bible, some of y'all will say that the Bible is a lie. But yet, you lie about the lie. So can we at least tell the truth about the lie? But that's a whole nother debate, whether if the Bible is the truth or a lie, or a lie. But let's at least tell the truth about the lie. Don't lie about the lie if the Bible is a lie. And if the Bible is the truth, don't lie about the truth. Tell the truth about the truth. But if it's a lie, at least tell the truth about the lie. Man, something's going on. This is crazy, man. Something wicked and corrupt has gotten into people, into mankind these days. Things are not like they used to be. People are not like they used to be. The spirit of man is becoming more corrupt and corrupt. But let's move on. Okay? Well, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to teach you. I'm here to tell you the truth. Okay? Because you got these other fools, they read the text. Most of them, they don't study it. They just read it. You can't, there's a difference between just reading and studying. You have to study it. But they just read it and they don't even tell you the truth about it. They're not honest to tell you the truth about it. But let's move on. So we're going to go to the book of, I believe is Esther, the book of Esther. Okay? Now the book of Esther was written during the rule of the Persians, during the time of Darius, Artaxerxes, that time. So, this is the time, some 200 years after, or 200 years after the Babylonian captivity. Okay? So, and it goes on to say, I'm just going to start at the part, because what I want to make clear here is I'm going to the sources where it just flat out says where the Jews were. Okay? I'm not going to beat around the bush, and give you some silly explanation or where the Jews were or based on some prophecies or none of that. No, I'm dealing with the real stuff. I want the truth. People want the truth these days. I don't want to hear your crazy, your silly, pseudo explanation of what you think. I want to hear what the source says, raw and original. So let's just go to the verse where it says, where it just flat out says where the Jews were. And it goes on to say, for the Jews that were in Shushan, which is another name for Susa in Persia. Okay, the city of Susa in Persia. So it goes on to say, for the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day, month of Ardar, and slew 300 men at Shushan. But, okay, yeah. but on the prey they laid out their hand. But the other Jews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together. Okay, we're going to stop there. So we clearly see here that the book of Esther speaks of Jews in Susa or Shushan. So in 400 BCE, you see, Jews were in Susa. Okay, we got accounts of them being in Babylon or Syria, still in Egypt, still in Cush, but not in West Africa. So, and let's make it clear. Okay, when we speak of the land of Cush in Egypt, see, the Hebrew Israelites, they will try to be slick and try to deceive you in saying that the Jews came into Africa instead of saying that the Jews came into Egypt. They will say that, well, they came into Africa, meaning all Africa. No, they came into Egypt, which is northeast Africa. They didn't come into all Africa. So when you're explaining this, be specific which part of Africa they came to. And you will see that they came into Egypt in Cush, which is East Africa. Not all of Africa. You had East Africa, you had Interior Africa, and you had West Africa, which is on the Atlantic. In the Niger River, and the Senegal, and all that. That was West Africa. And we hear nothing about Jews coming into West Africa. They came into East Africa. Let's make that clear. It's ridiculous. But let's move on to the next source. Okay, and I'm going to wrap it up soon. Okay. So we're going to go to Josephus Flavius in his book titled Jewish Antiquities. Okay. And he goes on to say, now, like I said, I'm dealing with the historical accounts that just flat out says where the Jews were. I'm being 100% honest with you. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm not going to deceive you. I'm going to tell you the truth. So, let's see here. Okay. So, yeah, we're going to deal with Josephus. Okay. Okay, this is Josephus Flavius. Look at that. Get these books and read them and study them. This is the real stuff. Not no fake DNA or some prophecy or not, the real stuff. Okay? And if you're going to say real history is false and not accurate, well, you might as well say the whole planet Earth is false and not accurate. You might as well say your existence is false and not accurate because, okay, just like real history, your ancestors and the planet Earth was here before you. And the old writings of history was here before your DNA. It was here before your theories and your false prophecies. I'm being real here. So, let's deal with this, okay? Just give me a minute here, okay? So, yeah, there we go, okay. Wait a minute. I got the wrong book, okay. brief here. So, this is strange. I got the wrong book. Oh man, come on. Yeah, so we're going to be dealing with Josephus Flavius and his account of the Jews in Cyrene. Now, Cyrene is directly west of Egypt. It is what we call Eastern Libya. It was the western border of Egypt. It's where Egypt ended to the west. Okay? And to the south, you had the Siwa oases, or the oases of Ammon. And that was the western border of Egypt. So he goes on to say for, where is it? Okay. Yeah, he says, for Sulla crossed over to Greece. Okay, Josephus Flavius, Jewish Antiquities, book 14, chapter 113. Okay, he goes on to say, Sulla crossed over to Greece to make war on Mithridates and sent Lucullus to put down the revolt of our nation in Cyrene. The habitable world was filled with Jews, for he writes as follows. There are 4 classes in the state of Cyrene. The first consists of citizens, the second of farmers, the third of resident aliens, and the fourth of Jews. This people has already made its way into every city. And it is not easy to find any place in the habitable world which has not received this nation, and which has not made its power felt. And it has come about that Cyrene, which had the same rulers as Egypt, has imitated in many respects, particularly and notably encouraging and aiding the expansion of the organized group of Jews which observe the national Jewish law. Okay, in Egypt, for example, territory has been set apart for a Jewish settlement. And in Alexandria, a great part of the city has been allocated to this nation. So, we see here, according to Josephus Flavius, that a nation of Jews settled in Cyrene, Libya, okay, which is Libya that borders Egypt on the west. Does not mean West Africa. See, now if we had accounts like this saying that Jews were in West Africa or Negro land or in Western Ethiopia, then we can celebrate. I will be celebrating in embracing that I am a Jew or from the tribe of David. But we can't. We can't, because we are not included. So then he goes on to say, yeah, it has come to pass about Cyrene, which had the same rulers that Egypt has entered. Okay, Jewish laws. Part, okay. Yeah. Then he goes on to say, well, I read that part already. So this nation has flourished in Egypt because the Jews were originally Egyptians. And because those who left that country made their homes nearby. And they migrated to Cyrene because this country bordered on the kingdom of Egypt, as did Judea, or rather, it formerly belonged to that kingdom. And it goes on to say, these are Strabo's own words. Now, Strabo is the Greek geographer that lived in the 1st century BCE. And we can't find his account of this. Maybe this is some lost writings of Strabo that we can't read, but that's what Josephus is saying, that they dwelt in Cyrene, in the countries bordering on Egypt during his time, during the 1st century AD. So pretty much after the Syrian and Babylonian invasion, we find Jews mentioned dwelling in Cyrene. And there's also an account of Josephus mentioning Jews dwelling in India as well. But I don't have that with me. So India, which is to the far east of Israel. Okay, so we can see that they were in the far east of Israel, but nothing about them being in the far west in Africa. So we got to be logical here, people. So we dealt with Josephus, and I'm not going to deal with that all day. There is more. There's plenty more. Trust me on that, but I'm just giving you a sample. Okay? So the next account we're going to deal with is Philo. Okay? Philo. He was a Greek writer. Okay? That lived in somewhere the 1st century AD, I want to say, 1st, 2nd century AD. And he also speaks of the Jews. Okay? And I pretty much dealt with some of this in my previous video, that Deuteronomy 28:68 had nothing to do with the Atlantic slave trade. So, Philo, in his book called Embassy to Gaius, 156 to 160. And he goes on to say, no, I'm sorry. Let's go here. Okay. Yes, okay. Yeah, Philo in his Embassy to Gaius. Where's that page at? There we go. Okay. Yeah, he says, how then did he show his approval? He was aware that the great section of Rome on the other side of the Tiber is occupied and inhabited by Jews, most of whom were Roman citizens emancipated, okay, for having been brought as captives to Italy. They were liberated by their owners and were not forced to violate any of their native institutions. So we see here, according to Philo, Jews, okay, from the tribe of Judah were in Rome, but no account of Jews in West Africa. So we're going to end that there from that part. And we're going to move on to later times. Okay? So, next source we're dealing with comes much later. We're going to deal with Leo Africanus, description of Africa. Now, this is from another account dated to the 1500 AD. Okay, it is quoting from Leo Africanus. Where is that? Okay. And we're going to deal with it. Oh man, come on. Just give me a minute here, people. Give me a minute. There we go. Okay, okay. Yeah, this is Leo Africanus, and it's dealing with the religions in Africa. And it's going to deal with where it speaks about the Jews. It speaks about the Jews, the Arabs, the Turks, all those people. And I'll be to it in just a second. Okay, Christians in Newville. Where is that verse? Okay. It talks about the Mohammedans. Yeah, there we go. And the Jews. So just be very patient here, people. Okay? And let's get off into it. I know this is a long video, but we got to get to the bottom of it. And I know y'all, a lot of y'all like to be entertained, and you want to look at a video with all this high quality and epic music and special effects and all that. Well, I'm not here to entertain. I'm just here to tell the truth, raw and original. So let's get off into it. Okay? Okay, Leo Africanus, description of Africa, the religions of Africa. And he goes on to speak of the Jews. He says, the Jews who have been dispersed by God throughout the whole world to confirm us in the holy faith, entered into Ethiopia in the Queen of Saba's days, in the company of a son that Solomon had by her, to the number, as the Abyssinians affirm, of 12,000. So 12,000 Jews came into Abyssinia, and there multiplied their generation exceedingly, and that they not only filled Abyssinia, but spread themselves likewise all over the neighbor provinces, so that at this day also the Abyssinians affirm that up on the Nile, or Nilus, towards the west, there inhabited a most populous nation of Jewish stock under a mighty king. So when he says up on the Nile to the west, he is talking about on the west bank of the Nile. Okay? And the king he is referring to is the king of Brno. Okay? Brno. And I'm going to show that. He says they're a nation of Jews ruled by a mighty king. Now, Brno or Brnu was in the region of Chad, which is Chad today. Okay? In Western Sudan. And he goes on to say, this prince, meaning the prince of Abyssinia, as far as we certainly understand, confined especially with three other mighty princesses. One is the king of Brno, another the great Turk, and the third the king of Adel. The king of Brno ruleth over that country which extends from Wangara towards the east, about 500 miles between the deserts of Su and Barca, being an unseen situation because it is partly mountains and partly plain. So, but we're not going to spend too much time on that. But that is showing that that west of the Nile, when he says west of the Nile, that means on the west bank of the Nile. So he says of some of our modern cosmographers, so we're going back to the account of the Jews. And some of our modern cosmographers set down a province in those quarters, which they call the land of the Hebrews, placed as it were under the equinoctial and a certain unknown mountains between the confines of Abyssinia and Congo. So it's between Abyssinia and Congo. It was in the interior, not in West Africa. Okay? So don't just assume because it says west of the Nile that it's West Africa. No, you gotta be more specific than that. Because there are lands west of the Nile River before West Africa, which is Chad, Congo, and the Western Sudan. Okay, so and likewise on the north part of the kingdom of Goam and southerly quarter of Goran, there are certain mountains peopled with Jews, who there maintain themselves free and absolute through inaccessible situations of the same. For in truth, this means the inhabitants of the mountains are most anxious and freest people, that the strong situation of their native soil secureth them from incursions of foreign nations, and the violence of their neighbors, such as the Scots, Britons, and Biscaynes in Spain. But to return again to our purpose, the Onzichi, who extend from the banks of the river Zaire even to the confines of Nubia. Okay, so use circumcision, also divers others bordering people do, a thing that must necessarily have been brought in by the Jews, and yet remaining still in use after the annihilation of the Mosaic law among them. Some also think that the people called Kafri or Kafatis at this day, who are Gentiles, draw their original from the Jews, but being environed on every side by idolaters. So we see here that Jews dwelt in the region of Zaire and to Nubia. Now Nubia is in Sudan on the Nile. So we cannot confuse Nubia with Negro. Negro is West Africa. The Negro lands is West Africa, south of Morocco, further south of Mauritania. That is the land of the Negroes. Nubia was south of Egypt in Sudan. So we cannot confuse the two. That's why some people say it is false for people to call the people in Sudan Negroes, because the Negroes was not referring to the region of Sudan south of Egypt. It was referring to the regions south of Morocco and south of Mauritania, to the west of Africa, not to the east of Africa. So, but we're gonna cut it. Okay, we almost there. But you know, I will read the whole thing to y'all. But it will take all day. But we're gonna continue on so we can get an understanding. So we're gonna go where we left off at. It swore from the law of Moses, and so are become Ezra's. Yeah, okay. Then he's done explaining the Jews that dwelt in the deep south. He goes on to say, on the other side, the Jews, being wonderfully increased in Spain, passed after and other into Africa, in Mauritania, and dispersed themselves even to the confines of Numidia, which is modern day Algeria, especially by means of traffic in the profession of goldsmiths, the which being utterly forbidden by the Mahometans or the Muslims, is altogether practiced among them by the Jews, as are likewise the divers other mechanical crafts, but principally that of blacksmiths. And a thing notably appeareth in Mount Sisa, in the kingdom of Morocco, in Tita. It is said that Eudet, which is Eideuet, okay, it is said that Eudet, Tedet or Eudet, it is said that Eudet, a town in the kingdom of Morocco, was inhabited by Jews of the stock, as they affirm, of David, who, notwithstanding, by little and little are grown Mahometans. So, we see here that, according to Leo Africanus, a tribe of Jews dwelt in Morocco who claimed to be from the lineage or stock of David. Now, since West Africans are so Jewish and we are so from the tribe of Judah, why is it not saying this about people in West Africa or Negro West Africa? This is Morocco, not West Africa. Morocco was far north of the land where our ancestors were taken from. Let's move on. It is said that Eudet, a town in the kingdom, was inhabited by Jews of the stock, as they affirm, of David, who notwithstanding by little and little are grown Mahometans. The Jews increased afterwards in Africa, when first Emmanuel, king of Portugal, put them forth of their dominions. For then many went over into the kingdoms of Fez in Morocco, and brought thither the arts and professions of Europe unknown before to those barbarians. In Betis, Tiza, Eladina, Tefsa, in Segomes, every place is full of them. So we see that Morocco, that the kingdom of Morocco was full of Jews. This is not talking about West Africa. It is talking about the north part, Northwest Africa, or North Africa. That's where the Jews dwelt. And the slaves that were brought to America were not taken from Morocco or Algeria. No, they were taken from the Negro lands, which was further south, from Gambia, Senegal, Ghana, that area, Benin, Mali. That is where the slaves were taken from. And the Jews were not dwelling there. The Jews dwelt further north. Are you hearing me? Real history, historical reality. I'm giving you the truth. So, it says Morocco was full of them. Okay, and it goes on to say they passed also by way of traffic even to Timbuktu, or Timbuktu, which is another word for Timbuktu. Although John Leo, or Leo Africanus, writeth how that the king was so greatly their enemy that he confiscated the goods of those who traded with them. So, there's another account, which I will read, in book 7, stating that the king of Timbuktu was an enemy of the Jews, and he did not allow Jews to live in the land of the Negroes, which is along the Niger River. They were not allowed to live there because he was an enemy of them. Now, the people on the Niger River, they were Hamites. They were descendants of Ham. They were the enemy of the Jews. Okay, they have lineages from Mizraim, from Egypt, from Cush, and from the Philistines. That's who the Negroes were. And they were at war with each other. And they were kingdom against kingdom, as the book of Isaiah 19 says. I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, kingdom against kingdom. And they were at war, kingdom against kingdom, and selling each other into slavery. But no Jews were dwelling there. So we already see that Jews were pretty much everywhere except West Africa, except the land that our ancestors were taken from. They were not even allowed. Not only were they not dwelling there, but they were not allowed in the land, in the Negro land of Timbuktu, Mali, okay, Wangara. They were not allowed to dwell there. Ghana, Guinea. No Jews. Okay. You know, then he describes them next as dwelling in Egypt. You know, we all know that Jews were always in Egypt. Matter of fact, that's where they came up out of, was Egypt. So we ain't even got to go there. But let's deal with one more account in Josephus, and we're going to move on to the next book, and then we're going to close it out there. Okay? So just be patient. Let's take our time, and let's get to the bottom of it. Okay? I'm not charging anything for this information. You know, I do it because I love it. That's the only reason why I do it, because I love it. I do it because it is my first love. Now we're going to go to Leo Africanus, book 7. And then I'm going to move on to the next source, and that's going to be the last source, and we're going to close it out. And we're going to go where he speaks about Timbuktu. He goes on to say, the rich king of Timbuktu, which was Askia Muhammad, or Muhammad Toure, who lived in the 1500 AD. Askia Muhammad. The rich king of Timbuktu had many plates and scepters of gold. Some were of weight 1,300 pounds, and he keeps a magnificent and well-furnished court. Okay? So he's talking about the rich king of Timbuktu. And we're going to move down further. And he says, he hath always 3,000 horsemen and a great number of footmen that shoot poisoned arrows attendant up on him. They have often skirmishes with those that refuse to pay tribute, and so many as they take. And they sell unto the merchants of Timbuktu. So he's talking about they often go to war with, you know, with the neighboring people, with their own people, with the people to the east and to the west of the Niger River. Okay? And he says, here are very few horses bred, and the merchants, courtiers keep certain little nags which they use to travel up on. Okay, we're going to skip that. And it goes on to say, he so deadly hateth all Jews that he will not admit any into his city. And whatsoever Barbary or Berber merchant he understandeth have any dealings with the Jews, he presently causeth their goods to be confiscated. So we see here that the king of Timbuktu, Askia Muhammad, was an enemy of the Jews, and he did not allow Jews to live in the Negro land. Now, Leo Africanus calls Askia Muhammad a Negro king. And he calls the whole land Negroes. And he distinguishes the Negroes from the Jews. So any ideal that Negro and Jew are the same, can be totally dismissed. That is false, inaccurate. Negro and Jew is not the same. Two entirely different people. I don't know how many times I got to say that. Negro and Jew is not the same people. And we read from earlier sources that Negroes or the Negrite or the Negrecians were descendants of Ethiopians from the Nile, from Egypt and Cush. Those were the ancestors of the Negroes of West Africa. Now, a lot of y'all got to study, man. Y'all have to study because a lot of y'all do not know. And please do not be debating these people if you have no knowledge of the subject. Because you will make yourself look like a fool and you will be defeated by lies and deception. So, we dealt with that. Okay, we dealt with Leo Africanus clearly saying, and you can read more where he mentions Jews all throughout Morocco and Algeria. But the Negroes, he mentioned in the land of Negroes, he mentions no Jews. The Negroes was inhabited, he said that the nations of five Libyan nations, meaning Moors, who came there in ancient times. They migrated from the north and they settled in the land of Negroes. They were Moors. They were not Jews. Okay? Meaning they were still Hamites. They were not Shemites. They were Moors. And they migrated south and settled amongst the Negroes. So we have an understanding that the Negroes, yes, we have an understanding that the Negroes or the Negro nations were not Jews. Never. It was one nation of Hamites, or what you call Africans. Those were the Negroes. So, we're going to move on to Mungo Park. Now, let's stay in the chronology of events here, okay? Because we don't want to go out of order. We don't want to lose ourselves, okay? We dealt with the Assyrian and Babylonian captivity in the 7th and 6th century BCE. And we dealt with Josephus in the 1st century AD. And we dealt with Leo Africanus in the 1500s AD. Now we're dealing with Mungo Park, which was the 1800s AD, the early 1800s AD, about 1799 AD, some 220 some years ago. Now, this here, pay close attention. This is the first mention of Jews, okay, of Jews in West Africa. And why? Because Timbuktu in the Songhai Empire was attacked, defeated, and destroyed by the Moroccans, or by the Moroccans of the Saidi Empire. Okay, Saadi, the Saidi Empire, or the Saudi Empire of Morocco. Okay, with their guns and musketeers. Now, this was the first time that the Negroes in West Africa encountered guns. So, the Moroccans from the north invaded the Songhai Empire in the south with guns, which they call muskets. And they invaded the Songhai Empire, and they attacked the Songhai Empire, and they conquered the Songhai Empire. And they brought down the power of the Askia and the Songhai kings. So, and after they conquered the Songhai Empire, okay, there were Jews in that army. And Jews, along with Moors and Arabs from Morocco, came to Timbuktu in the Negro lands and settled there. Okay, this was after the fall of the Songhai Empire that we find mention of Jews in West Africa, which was the 1800s AD. And these Jews were not slaves. They were not slaves. Let's make that very clear. So, let's just get right down to it. And we're going to end it off there. Okay. Yes, okay. So this is Mungo Park. He is speaking from a guy that, an African that actually been to Timbuktu, an African that dwelt in I think Gambia, Senegal, in that region. He traveled to Timbuktu, and he is telling Mungo Park about Timbuktu. He goes on to say, and he said there were many Jews at Timbuktu, but they all spoke Arabic and used the same prayers as the Moors. He frequently pointed his hand to the southeast quarter, or rather by the south, observing that Timbuktu was situated in that direction. Okay? So, but yeah, the description doesn't say much, but it makes it very clear. He says, from Walet to Timbuktu was 11 days more, but water was more plentiful, and the journey was usually performed upon bullocks. He said, there were many Jews at Timbuktu, but they all spoke Arabic and used the same prayer as the Moors. So we see here that the Jews that were in Timbuktu were Muslims, like the Moors, because they came with the Moors. They came from Morocco after the Moors sacked and destroyed the Songhai Empire. So we see here 1700s AD was the earliest date for Jews in West Africa. Any time before that, no Jews in West Africa. So all this nonsense about 12 tribes and all that, give that up. Give it up. That has nothing to do with us. Stop trying to figure out what 12 tribe you come from, because you have nothing to do with any of it. Okay? You got nothing to do with it. You're not from the tribe of Judah. You're not from the tribe of Eli. You're not even a Jew. You're not even an Israelite, because your ancestors were Negroes. And Negroes were descendants of Ethiopians, of Hamites from the Nile Valley. That's who your ancestors were. That is the historical reality. The black Hebrew Israelites want you to believe that there is some historical support behind this, but it's not. There's no historical support about Jews being in West Africa and taking their slaves from West Africa. Now, our ancestors in West Africa were descendants of Hamites who have been there for thousands of years before some Jews came there in the 1800s AD. Our ancestors were there way before that. They were there before the arrival of the Moors. They were there before the arrival of Phoenicians or Canaanites. They were there before all that. So, I'm going to cut it short there. And I will probably do another follow-up video about this. So there you have it. Straight from the books. And if any one of you Israelites want to debate me, step up. Let's deal with it. Don't run. So there you have it, people. Some of you said that the truth has been hidden from us and we finally found the truth. Well, guess what? You have not found the truth yet. You are still being lied to. Not only by racist white supremacists, but by your own kind. But by pseudo-Negroes. Pseudo-lying, corrupt-minded Negroes are lying to you. I know too much. You can't fool me. I eat, sleep, and drink in these books. I've been in these books all day. I want the truth. I want to know. I'm not a novice anymore. Okay? And that's why I'm here telling you this truth. And I'm not holding anything back. Because if it was in there, I'll tell it. But it's not in there. So I can't tell it because it don't exist. So there you have it. There were no Jews or Israelites in West Africa. Everybody else is a Jew except you, black man and black woman in America. But you do not need this. You do not need to claim Israel. Okay? You do not need to claim to be a people of the book. You don't need it. Because you already have a great history. And I noticed that every nation with a great history, these Jews try to force this Israelite identity up on them. But do not accept it, reject it, and embrace your true great history. They are coming at people who have great histories. And they are trying to force a lie and a false identity up on you. So you can't be proud of who you are and grow as a nation, and they will forever rule over you. Because you want to be cursed Israelites, okay, according to Deuteronomy 28. Okay, you want to be some cursed Israelites and wait on God, and these people continue to rule over you. That's why they want you to claim to be a cursed Israelite. And they can claim the blessings. They can claim to be a blessed Israelite. But the only solution is to reject it all. You're not a blessed Israelite. You're not a cursed Israelite. You're not an Israelite at all. You are an African. And the truth is going to set you free. Okay? If you accept the truth, God, the Almighty God, the real God, Amen or Amen Ra, will bless you. You got to accept the truth though. You can't go accepting lies. So I'm going to close out there, people. This is your brother Radio 1 saying until next time, Egypt stays in Africa. Peace, people, and see you later.